Welcome back to Carman Conversations, and we are deep into Season 5, talking all aspects of finance, and this episode we talk about car finance myth busting, which is going to be a really topical one. I'm looking forward to it, and as per normal, joined by Taylor to hit me with some of the curly questions. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you. I'm excited for this one because there are a lot of myths just with car dealerships in general that I just love us busting. But financing especially, I guess there are plenty that I could find and just know of in general that I'm keen to get to the bottom of.
All right, let's do it.
So myth number 1, the car must be brand new in order to finance. Is this true?
No, incorrect. And again, this is the cliche of, no, you got to have a brand new car to finance it and blah, blah, blah. It's not the case. You can finance on a used car. You can finance on a brand new car. There are parameters around if a car's too old, over 10 or 15 years old, that some financiers won't allow that sort of money. But no, you can finance up to, $2,000 or $3,000 if you wanted to towards a brand new car or a used car. So it's we're loaning money. So incorrect for question 1.
Incorrect. I like it. Okay, number 2, you must finance 100% of the cost.
Well, I just answered that one really. So no, not at all. So a lot of people, if you're hypothetically borrowing $50,000, doesn't mean you need to borrow 50. You might want to put a deposit in, for 20 grand and borrow the 30. You might, have saved up half the amount of money and want to just borrow, half. Or it might be a case where you only want to borrow a small amount. Entirely up to you, and that be new car, used car. There aren't any parameters around how much you can or can't borrow. But yeah, you don't need to borrow the full amount. Definitely not the case.
Okay, that is great news. Myth number 3. You're only eligible for a car loan if you have a full-time or a good salary, full-time job. Is this true? Or
no, probably. And again, this is the old cliche of car sales, from 30 years ago, I guess, when I first started. That was the thing that, you can't get finance unless, the term was, you got to be a gold brick, and you need to have more money than what you're wanting to borrow and all the rest of it. So wrong. No, not the case at all. With car finance now, there's no deposits needed. There's no actual terms around how long you'd need to borrow the money for to be eligible for it. Around do I need to be in a full-time job or whatever it might be? No, not at all. So there's a lot of people that borrow part-time. There's a lot of people that are permanent part-time. There's people that are casual. As long as there is income there, and it will come down to I guess responsible lending from the financier to say, oh no, you want to borrow $20,000, that's fine, and you've got the money there to do it, and there's security there, and you've actually got enough money over. But at the other time too, there'll be a case where it might be the case where you might be a little bit tight, and we say, no, that's a little bit tight. You probably will get the finance to prove that, but I think I'd rather see you borrow 15 grand or 16 grand so you're not as tight because we still want you to have some form of lifestyle. So that's not, you can only buy a new car or borrow money if you've got a full-time job and you earn over $1,000 a week. Not the case. We'll finance anyone. And as long as there's capacity to be able to pay back that loan and there's an income there and a regular income, we'll be able to offer advice. And also, we've got, and this is the beauty of what we've talked about in previous episodes, is we have multiple ways to finance a car and different financiers to finance the car and the best options which to suit the right person. So yeah.
That is great news because I think, if you are eligible, you would think that the financier would just say, yep, okay, you're eligible, let's get into it. But if you're actually offering to steer people in the right direction, even though they are eligible, it's not necessarily the right choice.
No. And I guess this goes back to the old school of buying or the current form of buying. And the current form of buying has been transparent and a great experience, and we want to see more people more often. And, that consistency in buying new cars. And I guess the old way of doing it is you sell them a car at the front door and you move them on and you don't give them an explanation of warranty, you don't give them an explanation of finance. They've got no idea really, and it was just a sale. Now it's all about the retention, and it's all about that car buying experience and that life cycle. And that life cycle is you want to give the best advice up front and offer that best genuine advice and have that great experience where it's real personal and relationships built, that you're going to continue to come back and you're going to continue to ring up and say, Luke, how much do I owe on my loan? Hey, I'm thinking about borrowing this amount of money. I'm looking for a second car. I've got this amount of money, this much a week to spend. Are you able to finance me? These are the relationships that will get built by the right advice up front.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think just the big, as I said before, lots of myths around car dealerships, and everyone's always saying, be wary of a car dealership.
Yep.
Know what you're getting yourself into. Myth number 4 really does hone in on that a bit more, that people should steer clear of dealership finance. Is that true?
No, it's not true. And, in fairness to the question, because, you go back into the old era 30 years ago, and that was the case. You wouldn't want to be doing car finance because people are thinking, hang on, we can get a rate of 10% at the bank, but you get 20% at the car dealership. Because there were some shonky car dealers out there were some shonky car brokers out there, and there were some people, in that finance sector that were doing some wrong things. But again, now with regulations around finance and with responsible lending in a case where it can't be where you get stitched up really on your finance, where that's been eliminated, your in-house finance is probably your best option because it's a secured loan to suit that exact car. Not a case where you might, Taylor, walk up to ABC Bank and say, I want to borrow 25 grand, it's a non-secure loan, and you're getting a rate as it's a personal loan against anything because it's not secured, as opposed to a finance directly around your security or your asset. So it's tailored to suit, and it's just not a standard 25 grand borrow. It's a borrow for this, and you've had your financier sit with you and go, hang on, well, let's work on the best term, whether it be 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Is a deposit needed? What's the weekly figure? Are you comfortable? Does that include your insurance? Does that include your service repayments? Does that include everything? That's the responsible lending, and that's the way it is in the current market, and the way it should be in the current market, not the old school way, which was probably being, oh, well, I need to borrow 30 grand, well, I'm going to the bank and this is it because the car dealer is going to be their car sharks. That's been eliminated out of that finance industry altogether. That's non-existent. And, when you look at us, for example, we finance up to, $5 or $6 million a month in vehicle finance. And every one of those loans is a secured loan but customised to suit for each individual. And at any point there, we have all that information back for the customer to be able to work as their direct account manager, you could say, when it comes to their finance and knowing where they're at in their term, what's the best advice, what their payout would be, checking in around their repayments, whatever it might be. These are the things you can't get from the bank anymore. Or to get it from the bank, you've got to go through that automated push 442 buttons first and hope that you're going to get some sort of operator, In today's market, when it comes to buying cars in automotive, you want to be able to speak to people and you want the communication. You want to have a relationship where you know the people you're talking to. They can ring up and say, Luke, can you check this for me? And you know who you're talking to, not in a queue. So yeah, definitely different from the way finance was. Valid question, but yeah, it would have been probably more relevant 30 years ago, I'd suggest. Yeah, not now.
Yeah, and I think coming into the dealership, it is about the convenience for a lot of people going with dealership finance.
Yep.
But you're definitely not paying for that. It is...
No, well, that's all transparency, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing that there is no fees and charges. You're seeing exactly, what it is, and you know that it's not this hidden cost that you get belted with at the end. It's all so upfront, and that's the way it's designed. That it's a big aspect, and I'd suggest that 50% of customers now up front will do the finance aspect first before the car. So they'll just want to talk about budget, they want to talk about repayments, they want to make sure it's in the right area before they proceed any further. Now that's because of good relationship, existing relationship, and knowledge that there's the trust there with the financier back around the car, and then we're going to give them the right advice. Because the right advice, and going back again into my prime a long time ago when it was car buying, and because of the irresponsible lending, that people could borrow a $20,000 car but have a loan for $35,000. To pay back some old debt and consolidate old previous loans. And what would happen in 4 or 5 years' time, they go to trade in that car that might be worth 10 grand, but they owe 20 grand on the car.
Yeah.
Now that's irresponsible lending, and that's in a position where that doesn't exist anymore. That it's within moderation, it's responsible lending, and that's such an important thing. And you're going to get that by having a relationship and talking to the right people where it's upfront and transparent for you.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Honest, upfront, transparent. That's awesome. Our last myth, number 5, you can't get car financing with a bad credit score. Is this true?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Because that is true to a degree. That you might have some bad credit, some really poor credit, and you might not be eligible for finance immediately. But this is where we work with you, and we do this right now, and in fact we do it multiple times a month. you may not be any good now, but you might be good in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months' time. So what we do is we'll work with you to tidy up that credit history. And if there's some unpaid fines, if there's unpaid defaults, or whatever it might be, and everyone's gone through a situation where they're not perfect, where we'll try and rectify this with them and work on a plan to say, well, hang on, let's tidy up that debt first. Let's get your banking looking really good, and let's reapply in 3 months' time where I'm confident your credit score will be better, or in 6 months' time where it'll be perfect, And keep in mind also that you buy a brand new car at the moment, you can be waiting 4 to 6 to 7 months. So we can work with you during that period, secure a car, pending the finance, and work with you through that period. So I guess you might think, well, what's in it for you guys? It's not really what's in it for it. It's about building that relationship, and thinking, well, you may have had a bit of a checkered past. It may not have been, that good, and you may have been given some wrong advice. But let's fix that now, and we'll fix that by being upfront and direct. And you can't get anything better than that. And like I said, we deal with that multiple times. So to answer the question, bad credit might mean you may not be eligible for the loan, but that doesn't mean that's going to be like that forever. All right, we work with you with that in privacy and come up with the best possible plan to make it work.
I think the main message here is just starting somewhere, even if you are in that bad credit score zone, just having those conversations at the very start and just seeing what is possible and how long it's going to take.
The big common one there is, and I get it quite a bit, is, oh, look, I really want to buy a car, but I've got really bad finance. I've got really bad credit history, and in fact, I don't even know where I said I'm going to have a bad credit score. And I would hear this, weekly, daily. And 90% of the time, I will reply with, why don't we have a look at it? We're the experts in the rain. Look, why don't we have a look at that and go, let's see how that would look over a period of time. Let's look at the borrow. Let's look where you're currently at, and let's see how bad it really is. A lot of the time, it's not as bad as what people think. And people think that, oh no, it's in a terrible state, or it's a late payment, or whatever it might be. We can help them through that and give them the right advice around the best way to handle it. But a lot of the time, they may have sorted the finance amount themselves. So they might be sitting there going, I can borrow 25 or 30 grand or 35 grand or 40 grand right now, but I don't even know it. And this is where you need to start that conversation with your business manager. So
it's even though these were all myths that are floating around out there, some really positive stuff coming out of this episode. So thank you, Luke.
My pleasure.
Sure, you've made a lot of people sitting at home feel a lot better.
No, I'm good. Thank you. If you'd like to know more about the myth busting, and I'm sure there's plenty to talk about because we're just touching the surface on that, follow the links in the description below to find out more.